Hello, Ohayo gozaimasu, and a rather mournful video. Today we learn of the passing of detective novelist Supreme Higashino Keigo, who passed away just this weekend, aged 68. I think one of Japan's most famous, internationally acclaimed novelists, very widely translated, someone who stands perhaps at the other end of a perceived spectrum from someone like Murakami Haruki, a man associated with one particular genre and with a particular take on that genre, the detective genre. And with a take that sort of placed not entirely novel or non-generic material inside quite a complex framework in which constant sort of developments, constant revelations don't so much progress a kind of ABC narrative, but lead to complications with regard to characters. So there's a kind of messy, murky, inchoate sort of reality, I guess, although I use that word hesitantly, to his work. Novels like The Devotion of Suspect X, A Midsummer Equation, Silent Parade, for me his greatest novel. More recently, Guilt, which I've just finished reading actually only a couple of weeks ago. He was someone who, like Matsumoto Seiichi before him, was very good at embedding his narratives and the protagonists in very complex cases where typically something from the past impinges on the present, and where events seem to be tied up fairly quickly, only to constantly sort of develop and mutate and change, so that it's almost like we get a kind of detective novella, and then once the main crime or case appears to have been solved, then further details are added, further revelations come to light, further developments take place, other characters appear. It sort of branches out, sort of swirls out almost centrifugally, so that having seen what appears to be a generic case already apparently solved, we are kind of wrong-footed and left with the rug essentially pulled out from under us as the case mutates and develops and motives are brought to light, etc. So a very distinctive novelist. There have been film adaptations, notable ones, going back sort of 15 years now, of most of his major works, and reasonably successful ones, ones that remain quite faithful. The film of Silent Parade is reasonably interesting, and all of which feature the same actor in the same role, the role that or the character that would reappear in 4 or 5 of Higashino's novels. That is Fukuyama Masaharu as Detective Galileo, possibly Higashino's most famous creation, and again a kind of mirror of someone like Kokoro Akechi, Edgar Allan Poe's famous detective, Japan's premier detective, so-called. Although in the case of Galileo, he's actually a physicist rather than a detective, and he's just called to help out on cases because of his supreme abilities. He's developed somewhat in the novels. The films go to pains to try and develop the character, particularly through in A Midsummer Equation, his relationship with a little boy. But nonetheless, he's a recurring figure and someone around whom other characters orbit, and they sort of develop and change and learn, and he sort of almost stubbornly stays the same, which is quite interesting. The films, I think, as well, are also all directed by the same director. That is Nishitani Hiroshi, a kind of workmanlike director, but a solid craftsman, and I wouldn't sort of argue against anyone watching the films. Certainly I would read the novels first and foremost, but the films are what they are. They're faithful, perhaps too reverent, but you know, nonetheless interesting. But certainly, to bring this back to the subject at hand, I certainly would implore you to be familiar with Higashino's work if you don't know it. There is, as I've intimated, a plethora of different contrastive voices in Japanese detective fiction, and Higashino certainly has a place at the top table. So seek his work out. Let me know what you've read, what you've seen, what you like, what you don't, why. So rest in peace, and I will speak to you soon. Goodbye for now.